I mean, I'm not your typical police chief, or I lean more left. I've always leaned towards reform. I always thought police departments had lots of room for improvement. And so I was telling this to one of my professors in college, and he said, you can, it's easier to change things from inside than from outside.
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know what this world is coming to.
You're listening to the Black and Blue Podcast, a discussion and celebration of the roles of African Americans and other minorities in U.S. law enforcement. Your host on the Black and Blue Podcast is Dale Peters, a law enforcement professional with over 20 years experience in the business. Hop on board this Black and Blue train of interviews, current events, and pop culture conversations. So get ready. The Black and Blue Podcast is coming at you right now. What up, Black and Blue fam? Welcome to the latest edition of the Black and Blue Podcast, where we celebrate diversity in U.S. law enforcement. Y'all know the name. I'm Dale, and I'm the host. Thank you for stopping by the show, because I got a real good one for you today. But before we do that, let me ask you, please, click those like, subscribe, and bell icons right down here on my YouTube channel. And if you listen to me on your favorite podcast platform of choice, make sure you rate the Black and Blue Podcast 5 stars. And finally, make sure you can follow me on any one of my social media platforms for even more content. You can find me everywhere at Black and Blue US. All right, y'all. So let's get the party started, shall we? My guest today is the Chief of Police of an amazingly beautiful city up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And he's here to tell us all how his department works to keep it that way. So Black and Blue fam, please help me welcome to the show, Emeryville, California Police Chief, Jeffrey Jennings. How you doing, sir?
Pretty good, Dale. How you doing? Fam?
I cannot complain. It's another beautiful day down here in Southern California. How's everything up there in NoCal?
Right now it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. Bay's right outside my window. I see it glisten. The water glistening is nice.
Yes. I appreciate you coming on to the show. I was telling you before we got going here that I'm a Niners fan, so I try to make it up there every chance I get. Haven't been to a game this season yet. Just came back from a conference up in Seattle, and when I was up there, I saw the Seattle game where they played the Niners. So that was a good time.
That was a good game.
Yeah, it was a good game.
Yeah.
And like I also was clowning you a little bit before about the Raiders, but you said you moved on.
I moved on to the Warriors. It's hoop season. Started October 22nd.
Yes, it did. How you feel about them getting rid of Clay?
I mean, it was sad, but I think it was a win-win. It's a win-win. He's going to get more playing time. He's going to get the love he needs and see what he can do. And he's doing well. So we wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah. All right. So again, I appreciate you coming on. I mentioned in the intro there that you are the Chief of Police of Emeryville, and I mentioned that it's up in the Bay Area. Kind of tell everybody a little bit about Emeryville real quick.
Yeah, so Emeryville is like it's a tiny little city right between Oakland and Berkeley. So we have great shopping. We're really big on biodiversity, so we have a bunch of buildings. Emeryville is only 1.2 square miles, but during the day we have like 30 to 40,000 people here working and shopping. But during the nighttime, there's only like 13,000 people that actually live in Emeryville. So we're like Reno, the biggest little city in Northern California.
Nice. And how long have you been there?
So I've been in Emeryville for 4 years. I came here in 2020, but I've been in law enforcement for 33 years.
Okay. Where'd you come from?
So I started Contra Costa Sheriff's Department. So it's the largest department. It's still in the Bay Area, in the East Bay. Martinez, Walnut Creek, Concord, Richmond, Pittsburgh. And then I went to BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit Police Department, for another 8 years. So 21 years at Contra Costa, 8 years at BART as a deputy chief. And then I was blessed to get this job at Emeryville.
Congratulations. And you say you came in 2020. That was a rough year for the whole nation, but for law enforcement in particular, right?
Absolutely. It was very difficult. Pretty much the last decade plus has been difficult in law enforcement. I call it basically protest the pandemic. So, we started with the protest, really with Oscar Grant. That's why I went to Bay Area Rapid Transit as a reform deputy chief to reform that police department from that murder that happened. So from, 2011, and then we get to the pandemic, it's been a decade of a lot of changes for us in America and in law enforcement specifically. A lot of intense focus on what we do.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Are you originally from the Bay?
My pops, he's passed away. He was in the military, so I was born in D.C. and moved around Georgia, Puerto Rico, but basically raised in Fairfield, California, which is still it's like North Bay, not in like 40 miles from San Francisco and Oakland. So yeah, basically a Bay guy. Warriors,
Nice, nice.
Raiders, you
Okay.
know.
You said Puerto Rico. Do you remember that?
I remember a little about Puerto Rico where I learned how to swim and joined the Boy Scouts when I was there. Remember the island. I just went back maybe 4 years ago. It's a beautiful, beautiful city, beautiful
Yes,
state.
yes,
Really
yes.
like it there.
Not
Would definitely go back.
notwithstanding, some comedians' remarks, it is a beautiful country.
Outrageous, outrageous
Beautiful.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it
beautiful
is. It is.
people. Yeah, great food. Yeah, I enjoy Puerto Rico.
You speak Spanish?
I've been doing Babel for I don't know 3 months. I still can. I took, yeah, I took it in high school and I passed. But it's a use it or lose it thing, and so I'm trying to get
Yeah.
back into to using it. So no, I do not,
Okay.
unfortunately.
But you got along when you were over there in Puerto
Oh
Rico.
yeah. Oh well, Puerto Rico. It's well, we're just English. Just
Yeah,
English is the main
yeah.
language. And I've been to Mexico like 6 times, and every time it's been easy getting along and navigating. I can understand enough to keep me out of trouble.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I hear you on that one. So you were kind of raised up in Fairfield. You said what kind of got you interested in this job in law enforcement?
Well, good question. So I was always interested in law. My childhood um, hero was Thurgood Marshall. I wanted to be a lawyer. After I finished my bachelor's degree at Sac State, I applied to Howard. And then I don't know if it was fortunate or unfortunately, my girlfriend at the time, my high school girlfriend, got pregnant with our first child. And, I couldn't be a broke college student any longer. And so I fell into applying to this job. I mean, it's an interesting story. What happened was one of my professors, I was, you know, radical. I mean, I'm not your typical police chief, or I lean more left. I've always leaned towards reform. I always thought police departments had lots of room for improvement. And so I was telling this to one of my professors in college, and he said, it's easier to change things from within inside than from outside. And that always stuck with me, even though I never wanted to be a cop. When I realized I needed to get a job and I just finished my degree, I said, well, let me try this. I can always work and go to school at night, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the camaraderie. I fell in love with all the good we could do. I saw tons of room for improvement. When I joined the sheriff's department, there was only 50 African Americans working there at a department of, I think it was like 600 at the time, and less Hispanics and hardly any Asians. But the values that we were changing by just starting hiring more of us to come in there and change what the place looked like, how we policed, it became very intoxicating. I'm in love with the profession now.
Yeah, yeah.
31 years later.
It's
And
weird
so I
how
kind
things
of
work out that way, right?
oh yeah, you plan and then God laughs because He has His own plan. And I never thought I would be here. Especially, I'm like one of the last guys from my generation still working for a person who never wanted to do this. And a lot of my friends always wanted to do this. My old man was in the military and then being a correctional officer. He wanted to be a cop when back in the day. And I never knew that because, he kind of laughed when he said, I told him I was being a cop because I was always like, rah, rah, rah against the police. And he's like, now you want to be a police officer. You mature, you find your
Yeah.
way, and you make changes where you land. And so that's one of the things I'm proud of all the time is making changes every step I go. In my opinion, for the better.
Yeah.
So
Did you find that working in this profession, and you said you kind of fell in love with it, that kind of your views kind of changed from what you thought you knew as a civilian, as opposed to when you actually got inside and now you're on the other side of that badge?
Yeah, my views have changed, but my eyes were open to the fact that when we're talking about working in a under underrepresented community, like when I was working in North Richmond, um, the people there, they want law enforcement. They want calm. They want to be able to have their kids go to the park, go to school, get a good education like every other American. And they loved us being there. Um, but they wanted us to do the job in a fair, equitable, non-biased way. And that's what was missing. They want law enforcement in those communities. They just want to be treated fairly and, do things the way the community want things to get done, which was what we were bringing to the table when a lot of us got hired in the late 80s and into the early 90s at Contra Costa. They were under a consent decree. I didn't know this, to hire more people of color, from like 1985. And that's when a lot of us came into the business. All my friends are older. They hired in 85, 86, and I came in 91. But that was from a consent decree, that they still might be under. I don't know. But the
Wow, to
changes
this day.
I don't know if it's ever been taken off. I never looked into it, but I didn't even, but I know that's how there was a consent decree about hiring people of color. Uh, and even right now, there's issues at a lot of our departments because not a lot of our kids, the young men and women who can do this job, don't want to do this job. This goes back to my 10 years of, you know, riots and pandemic and the police being the forefront of all that, being
Yeah,
essential workers and all that. And, the kids, and I know I have three daughters of age, and, none of them wanted to do this job. None of their friends, even the ones that went into the military, talking about the kids of color, the Latinos, the Asians, and the Blacks, they never came back and joined this profession, which I found interesting because I used to be one of the groups that would get a lot of our new officers from is from people who got out of the military. But that's not the case as much. It's
so
a
so
tough.
what do you think is the main reason why that is?
The main reason is because I believe my feelings are the negative nature of how the media portrays what we do, and then also the fact that a lot of people do not voice their opinions about how good we've gotten since all these reforms come into place. We're much better police than we were when I started, and I'm sure that it'll be much better after I leave if we don't allow it to retract. To when my old chief used to say, "You stretch it out like a rubber band. You don't want it to snap back to where it used to be." And so we need to keep hiring people who think like you and I think, and move the profession forward to keep it, in line with our principles of building trust and legitimacy.
Yeah.
And that's that's my concern. I know some of the questions that might have in the future is most my concern. My concern is that can we continue the growth that we've had, if people don't join, who think the way that you and I think? This is a noble profession, and you can do a lot of good stuff with the blue on.
Yep. Yep. And you mentioned one of the reasons why you did want to get into the job, was kind of changed from the inside. That was what was one of my motivating factors. Looks like we're around the same age because Rodney King was kind of one of the catalysts to make me want to, change it from the inside rather than, a lot of people back then were like, F the police and,
Hmm.
and reforms aren't a bad thing, but defunding and all those sorts of things, like
Hmm.
in George Floyd and all those things happened in 2020. So yeah, I can see, why the youth does believe that way, but we got to work to kind of change those thoughts.
Yeah, and like my daughter, my baby daughter, she's 25 now, but she was riding. She was in college doing all that, and she was doing her protest. She had her BLM shirt on and go out there. We'd have great conversations. Um, because I was counterbalancing what her thought. Her processes were from what she sees in the media, which
Yep.
isn't the whole story. And so she's moved on from there. She's doing good. Not that she was doing bad before, but I think it was great for her to be engaged in the community and be engaged with, what your beliefs are. And that's what I taught all my kids. If you believe something and you've done your research, make sure you go out there and do it the right way. And she did, um, along with her friends. But now we see that there's more to you. You can't defund without replacing having systems in place to catch some of these people who need help. And
For sure.
I tell this story often about the defunding, and then what we do in law enforcement, like especially in corrections. When I was in the sheriff's office, a lot of those guys and gals who 86% of the people who go into county jail were high or drunk when they committed whatever crime they committed. That's a huge, and a lot of the 86% people come in are drunk and high. A high percentage of those people are basically self-medicating because they need mental health care. And so these are some of the stuff that me and my kids and the kids I talk to in the streets say, some people are doing drugs and drinking just because they have underlying mental health issues that are not being addressed. And the county jail always provided that. And I know right now, like LA County is the highest, the biggest mental health working system in California, if not in the United States. Maybe New York has something bigger. And that's a failure of us for the defund. If you're going to defund something, you need to replace it with something that's going to care for those folks who need help. And the county jail was it. And I tell this story from a personal perspective. My brother, who ended up being drug addicted, but he was a firefighter and had his family, beautiful family and kids, lost all that to drugs. And the only thing that saved him was one time he finally did something bad enough to look at going to prison. And he went to county jail for a year. And this is after going to several VA rehabs, but finally he hit bottom in county jail. And a year of being clean, it's been a decade. He's been out. He owns a home. He's a good citizen, and those stories aren't told enough. And that's my personal story. And I got a mental health story also with my one of my older brothers. So, my parents were 50-50. Two of us are good and two of us are struggling in our family. But those things impacted me when I looked at law enforcement, how I interact with everyone I see in the streets. I would see my brothers, see a drug addicted person, I'd see a mentally ill person, I'd see my brothers. And I treated people that way until there was time where you couldn't, and brothers fight, sometimes you had to fight. But county jail was one of the things I thought is one of the biggest parts that's missing, where, they'll give us Narcan and let people just live in the streets until they die. Don't get them help in the hospital because we're not going to go. And county jail used to be where you get help. I mean, I can go on and on. I don't want to take too much of that, but those are the things that, me and my kids, and I talk to other kids about when we're talking about defunding. Well, what are we replacing it with? Where is the help coming from?
Yeah. A lot of that had to do with, some of the Senate bills, assembly bills that came through California that, decriminalized a lot of those crimes that we were talking about, those drug crimes, where they were, mandated in drug courts and things like that, where they were mandated to get that treatment. And then now they're not mandated because, they don't go through the system.
Exactly correct, Dale. That's exactly the problem. And so it's like they're abandoned. The system has abandoned those folks. And what you see now is, when you see in the big cities with the homeless encampments are bigger than they've ever been. And the youth that are allowed to think that stealing is okay because there's no consequences. We all know as children that when you did something wrong in mom's house, I was raised by my mom. If I did something wrong in my mom's house, there's repercussions. If there's no repercussions, then I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. These kids don't see the repercussions. I mean, I think things are, and I'm not saying that, I'm definitely not saying that I want these kids and these young adults to be in the system. I want them to have opportunities to get help and to correct their behaviors and find a better way. But this goes to education and homelessness and what I never knew was called basically food scarcity, and you're not eating, you're not getting enough food at home, the right foods at home, and so you're not educated. So I mean, we were on assistance when my parents divorced and they were younger, and we had enough money for my younger brother to get get on the food vouchers at school, but not enough for both of us. So my younger brother got it, and I didn't. And to this day, I can go all day without eating because that's how. There was some days where I went all day without eating, um, and it's not good for my health. But I realize this now that that's just how it was. But some people are not going to be able to function, and they're going to go into stores to steal, and they should not be put in jails and county jails and get into the system just trying to survive. And so there was a whole bunch of issues society
Right.
wise that we deal with as law enforcement officers.
Right. Now, Chief,
We're the
those
first
are
front.
those individuals that go in to steal to survive. That's one category. But we've also
Correct.
seen recently the other category of people that go in to steal because there's rings of thieves that go in there for profit.
Absolutely, and that's the difference, and that's where we're missing the boat. Where a lot of the laws, I think the law that's on the coming up for election now is like if you've been caught twice and convicted of being in possession or convicted of stealing a certain amount of money, you're going to be, you don't get the pass any longer for that, and that's more in line with what I think that we think. We want to make sure that we're helping those that need to get help, and the ones who are doing this for profit and for no other reason, just to make money, need to feel the repercussions of the legal system. And I think that,
Funny,
well,
funny.
that's like,
Didn't we have something already in the books back in the day that was repealed? Remember 666? Remember
yeah,
PC six
of
six
course,
six?
they took 666
That from the
off
prior. Remember it? Yeah,
with the
yeah,
priors, yep, all that.
yep, yep.
So the the pendulum is always swinging backwards and forwards, um, and trying to find a balance. And it's basically on what the community wants. Without the community, there's no law enforcement. Without, we get our power comes from the community, and we need to do what the community wants. And I think the community is leaning towards more of a fair and balanced system right
Right.
now.
Problem is, I don't believe that the community, not that they don't know what they want, but sometimes they're duped into thinking some things in these bills are one thing when they're in actuality another thing.
Mhm.
And maybe why these things need to be repealed because they're being sold a bill of goods that isn't true either.
You're very correct, and that's as a groups that have their own agendas that put pork into these bills that have nothing to do with what we're voting on, and humans people got to do their own research. They got to read the bill and not wait for the last minute to decide what they're going to vote on, or go by their party's ticket: Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green. You just can't look at the ticket because not everything fits all parties.
Yep.
I'm not all Democrat. I'm not all Republican. There's certain things I like from each group, but the most important thing is treating people like human beings. How are we going to be human to each other and treat each other right? Not that's the principle I start with, and then let's look at these laws that lawyers are writing up.
Yep, that part right there, Chief. Couldn't have said it better myself. So, earlier we were talking about, Emeryville and some of the struggles you're having, and I'm assuming that's across the nation with personnel. How strong is your department as far as personnel?
So we're a small department, which has been a blessing. I've done the big departments, and I've done small units. So we are 41 sworn, total of 58 with my professional staff, and right now we're blessed with being just one short. Um, and we're one short because my captain got a chief's job in another area, and so I'm not even one short in patrol officers. So
Okay.
I'm one of the few agencies that can say that, um, and I'm very proud of that fact right now.
Yes.
I'm very intentional with hiring. So a lot of chiefs in bigger departments, especially, have a hard time being deeply ingrained with hiring. When I was at BART, same thing. I got that number down to single digits. Now it's a large department because I would go to recruiting as a deputy chief, um, and it's very rare you go to recruiting seminars anywhere and you'll see anyone higher than a sergeant. But I go. I would make my lieutenants and my captains go, because we're showing that hiring the right people is by far the most important thing to having a healthy police department that will treat the citizens well. So I'm deeply intentional on hiring people of color. Um, I think 10% of most departments have 10% women. We got ours up to 20%, and I'm starting 20% of really good future leaders in law enforcement. Because you got to make that a focus. And so
Yep.
if you have to revamp your recruiting team, that's what you do. I did it in, like I said, everywhere I've been in position to make the changes, I make the changes I know are important. You change your recruiting processes and you change your FTO program, because the FTO program is another way they weed out people if you don't know what's going on in your FTO program. It's important to be very intentional in that also, and incentivize the right people to join, go out there and say, hey, I think you'd be a good FTO, and really be engaged. And so I made that a priority in both organizations when I had that ability, and has made huge changes in both
Yeah.
of them, I thought.
So you're talking about, the hiring of FTOs and having that philosophy filter down, as opposed to, the FTOs not relaxing standards, correct?
Not relaxing standards at all, but making sure you're giving people a whole. So to me, it starts with the recruiting and the hiring. It starts with, there's post stand. I mean, you're an FTO. There's post standards on what you can and can't do. There are recommendations, and so in some hiring organizations, back in not too long ago, I said even at BART, if you had smoked weed within the last year, you're automatically not eligible to test. If you gotten a DUI less than 3 years ago, some of these and some things that even things that happen when you're a juvenile, they would automatically cut you out of the hiring process. Cut, and the higher ups, whoever you are, wouldn't never see the name. And so I went to the programs, both places, and said, this is not a reason to say someone can't be a cop. And they smoked weed 2 years ago, whatever it may be. These rules were, I want to see the whole person. How are we looking at, what have they done since that particular time? What kind of job have they had? What kind of education are they seeking? How do they interview? There's several reasons to make sure that you're making the funnel bigger for us to figure out who the good people are. I found that most of the times the people who were being cut out early were people of color and women. And so I intentionally went at that uh, full force, made sure I got people that had the same philosophy as me and in those positions to make that. Otherwise, I would never know. And then, same thing with the FTO program, extending people, making it harder on people, having a culture of failure instead of a culture. We're gonna let you fail on your own. We're gonna give you every opportunity to succeed. I don't believe in the high pressure FTO program. I don't believe in the high pressure what's it called, the high pressure regional academies either. I think that if we want humans to think like free thought and be able to think as an adult, there's certain things we're going to regiment: shooting, driving, the laws, knowing the laws. But there's so much room for free thinking within the rules and the laws that we have in California and the federal laws. And so all that comes in to get a whole person coming in here and they have an opportunity to find a home, find people who think like them, and they can actually impact changes in the street when they're encountering people. That's one of the things with like cameras, the body worn cameras that we were in now. When we started, there was no body worn cameras, and there was a lot more discretion you could have. A lot of things, so a lot of things they've done great things for people who don't believe. We're trying to build trust, and we're trying to build trust and legitimacy. So the cameras are good, but some of the things it takes away is I go into Jimmy's house, and I know Jimmy all the time, and Jimmy he's on parole, and he has a gram of meth or crack cocaine, whatever it may be. Where back in the day, we sit there and say, hey, I need you to get rid of that. And, instead of sending you back into prison for a year because you're not doing anything wrong, besides that's kind of your issue, and we're not trying to get you some help, tell you to talk to your parole officer, and the parole officer has some latitude. Now there's very little latitude with those things, where now Jimmy will tell me, hey, you know what, the guy that did X, Y, and Z is around the corner. We've ruined those relationships with cameras and
Yeah.
those things have been we don't have that how I used to do policing. Um, I don't know, and it's just changing. It's always changing. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but those are the realities of how things are now. And now you have a lot more robotic officers who are not willing because you're risking your job if you do things that you see things that we would do in the 90s. Besides the brutality part, we're talking about the community policing part where you can let someone slide. Those days are pretty much gone.
Yeah.
And so you don't form a relationship like you used to. Jeff's coming to your house. He's a cool cop. You know, we'll treat him with respect. You know, because you form relationships. You still can. You still can. It's just not
And
as
I think
easy.
I think we still do. I think we still do,
Yeah,
Chief.
yeah.
We still do. Yep. Yep. You know, I mentioned in the intro here, and you've mentioned it a couple times, that you know you're keeping your community a nice community, and you're discussing how you're doing that. Why don't you talk about some of the programs that you have implemented and what your officers are doing over there to kind of combat the crime that's ravaging the area?
Well, basically, my crime is down. So, what I for some reason in Emeryville we didn't have a beat system, so we didn't have a beat system, and so I implemented a beat system, basically basic community policing philosophy. We also got we finally got flock cameras. So beat systems got the officers to be really engaged with a small sector of the town. They can still visit other parts of the town because again we're small, but now they know their areas way better, and so the citizens who have someone in beat 3, they know that Dale's coming. Dale will be here between 6 and 3, and I got something to tell Dale. They have relationships that are built, so those have made things very made us a really tighter community in that
Yeah.
sense. And we do a bunch of HOA housing meetings. We have several large housing complexes, hotels, condominiums. Not as many homes here, a lot of condominiums. And so we've done a lot of community outreach up to right now. I think we've done like 45 community outreaches in the city. Coffee with a Cop, school meetings, Halloween meetings,
Very good.
National Night Out. Um, we're doing Heroes and Helpers, getting the coat thing going, starting up soon. And the city wasn't big into that when I first got here. They were dabbling in it, but we're full blown engaged. And it's funny, the same people who do my recruiting intention are the same ones who are running my community engagement part. And so the new cops that come in been way more engaged with that. I have, I think 80% of my department is 10 years or less. And so
Wow.
they know that community engagement is an important factor to me and also really important for the people who want to promote. And so when the promotions are coming, next year they're coming up, but they've been doing it for a while now. The first 2 years were tough because of COVID. And so we're getting out there a little bit, but now it's full fledged. It's part of our culture now. And that
Right.
was important to me to make it part of our culture, that it'll sustain itself after I go because I see the value in it. I also see the value, the city sees that my city council, my city manager see the value in that. That helped them to get one of the largest raises they've ever gotten in Emeryville because of we have like a 70% approval rating in our city, which
Nice.
is pretty unheard of. But it's because of the community engagement, and also we're a service oriented department. You know, we're not like other large departments where it's call to call, call to call. We have beats, a time where you can get there and you can give someone a little more than they expect. And unfortunately, our neighbors are busier, and and they're short in staffing, and they're going call to call where we can provide pretty good service to folks and good follow up, which is
Yeah.
unusual too.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that you mentioned during that talk right there is, you know, flock cameras, which are, you know, for the audience that doesn't know, you know, cameras that are strategically placed throughout the city that can capture events that we can go back and look at later. Talk about how your city is leveraging technology. I know you were talking about, you know, some of your neighbors are busier than you are, but you know, criminals don't necessarily see borders, and you know what happens
No,
next
they don't.
door will soon spill over in your town.
Absolutely correct, Dale. No, they don't see borders. They don't see regions. They get in cars and they drive wherever
Yep.
the hunting is good. So initially, when I first got here, there was a no-go with Flock. The Privacy Coalition had their hands into to my electeds, and they didn't think that it was worth it. But over a period of time, and me continually um, promoting the fact that we'd be the only people in the county that didn't have it. If you don't get it pretty soon, was that people were going to generate their criminal activity towards us because we don't have that system. And we have a really good Bay Street as our our beacon street of shopping, Nordstrom, Sephora, Ulta, and we've had our share of issues, especially after the George Floyd, where the rioting was taking place. And they were coming to Bay Street and they were tearing that up. So the flock cameras allow us to basically be on par with our peers, to be able to regionally work the same criminals as they're driving through. We have multiple stories of how the criminal went from San Leandro to San Francisco, tracked throughout the flock cameras, and then driving in Emeryville. We just caught someone this weekend. CHP was chasing, California Highway Patrol was chasing this one group of criminals. They ended up being in Emeryville. Our cameras are talking to each other. CHP came into town with our officers and they arrested these guys who have been going city to city robbing folks. Several stories like that, anecdotal. It's going to be hard to basically to do a actual audit on how crime is affected by it, but a lot of it's anecdotal. And also we have several times where when officers see the cars who are stolen and they go behind the car and they take off, and that's a crime that probably was prevented. Those are the kind of stats that we're going to start putting out after we have the cameras for a year. But now everyone has them, and what's more important, or just as important, is several individuals and businesses have also bought the same technology. So some of our large business complexes, they have more cameras than the city does, and so they put us on the share, and so we're all sharing the same information. So multiple times this has happened, and so I'm very pleased with that. We got a new computer automated dispatch system, which gives us the ability to do real time policing for crimes, and also we have a dashboard that you can go on the website and you see what's going on in the city. That all happened that happened last year. Flock happened this year. And so those are the technologies that are really, really important to me. We're looking at getting drones, for disaster preparedness, and also, windshield surveys, but also we can maybe at some point get to first responders with drones. So those are the things we're looking at with a small department. We've had the same amount of cops since the 90s. And so we haven't expanded our police force, but we're multiplying our police force with technology. And so those are one of the things that we're trying to do because, technology doesn't have benefits. It's cheaper, no medical, no retirement. And so this is the points I've been pointing out to my electeds. Like, this is why if you're not going to give me more cops, you have to give me these things. And it's been working.
Is that something that you're always continuously working to do, is to try to get your force multipliers up as far as, get more officers on the street, based on census, based on crime statistics, based on, all sorts of different things? You're always out there trying to boost your numbers.
Dale, it's one of my primary things that I do is sit there and I just drop pebbles in the water. Like, we have if we have anything major happens, we're going to need regional help. We're going to need our neighbors to come help us. We all have multi-agency relationships, things like that, but you don't want to be dependent upon, I don't want to be dependent upon Berkeley. Berkeley doesn't want to be dependent upon us, but we do share assets. We're I think we're the only region, the police department that has canines. Still Oakland doesn't have them, Berkeley doesn't have them. So that's one of our regional assets that we offer. That do.
They don't, huh?
No, they don't have them.
Is that a philosophy?
It's a philosophy by the electeds in their cities, yes. And also, and that's, and I also here to combat the same thing, for my elected, my council, why do we have them when no one else has them? I tell them why. And so far they're along with it because again we got a high amount of respect. Our dogs are also bomb trained for detecting AEDs, IEDs, and also protection dogs. I cross train them, which is important to me also. Very rarely do we actually um, end up having a bite where we bite someone, but we've had lots of functions where we can go and do pre-inspections. We've actually, we found lost people, lost children with our canines. So, you know, it's always trying to sell what you do well to make sure
Yes.
you have reasons for people to come here. It's another asking, we're a small department. So what do you offer that Berkeley doesn't offer, Oakland doesn't offer, San Leandro, Hayward? Well, we do have canines, we don't have a SWAT team, but we have this. And what I offer in our department is really try to have a family atmosphere. And like any family, it's functions and dysfunctions, but I definitely push that upon us that we celebrate each other's wins and you celebrate each other's losses, and we just try to stay together as a small crew in our town. And so one of the benefits of being in a small
Yeah.
police department.
Yeah, absolutely. I always touted that. I work for a small department. We're about 100 sworn, and
Okay.
and I originally came from a larger department, and I always likened it to the chief knows me, the chief knew my family, knows my family, all that sort of thing. So when you're doing well, the chief knows, and the deputy chief knows, and on I've never had to worry about that, but on the opposite end of
Yeah.
that, when you're not doing well, the chief knows.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't hide in a smaller department.
Cannot hide. And that's one of the things that I had learned in hiring is like, yeah, you can't hide. You got to be a well-rounded human being to survive in this place. You can't be a one-trick pony. In a large department, you can go off to some area, some unit, and thrive there and and survive and have a great career. But in small departments, you got to be able to do multiple things
Yes.
um, to keep yourself interested and to keep yourself relevant. Um,
Yeah.
so
I always like to like back when I was on patrol, DUIs, some of the
mhm,
larger departments, at least down here in this area, a lot of like LAPD, a lot of their patrol officers don't do DUIs. They have to call a DUI car. It's like, but
yeah,
you're the cop on the scene now. It was your PC, you know, you should be able
you,
to balance
you
this
should be able to
person
do
out
that.
and make sure that if they're impaired or not. So, yeah,
And it's a good skill set. It's a
it
good
is.
skill set. I mean, in law enforcement wise, just to get into other things. You know, just because they're dudes don't know what else they've been doing.
Yeah,
So
no
why would
doubt.
you want someone else to come in to take over your detail? But
No doubt. No
yeah.
doubt. But on the flip side, they also have a lot of good details that we'll never get in our smaller departments.
Hmm.
Diving crews and all sorts of
Yeah,
different. So yeah, it just depends on what you want in your career. And speaking of which, your career, what's
yeah.
next for you? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Well, Dale, this is the coming to the end of the rainbow for me. It's 33 years into it,
Yeah,
and so I've done pretty way more. This has been a blessing of a career, and got um, so there's nothing else for me except for to help others. My whole goal right now is to make sure this place is stable and as it's future forward, it's community oriented, uh, learns and continues to appreciate diversity and people of other colors and thought process, gender, sexuality. Um, if that legacy stays here, I'll be very happy. And probably after that, I'll try to hang on my grandkids, probably maybe teach junior high or maybe high school freshmen so I can coach. 'Cause I used to coach um, AAU
coach. What
basketball
do you
and
coach?
track.
Okay, okay,
Basketball.
all right,
Yeah. Yeah. I did it for like 20 years, but then when start moving too high up, I didn't have the time to do it. So
nice.
yeah,
Yeah, okay, okay. And then so we're talking about what you're going to be doing in the future, and have people coming up behind you. Are you mentoring those behind you to kind of take over for you?
absolutely. I've been always, since I got promoted to sergeant in 2000, it's really never been about, I'm trying to build my career up as got to where I'm at now, but it's always been about someone else after I got promoted. And I've always been mentoring, always doing mock orals, and I have a pretty good contingent of people who've gotten promoted, become chiefs in other places. Um, not just because of me, but I had, a little piece of that. So I take a lot of pride in that, and I will continue doing that. And one of my mentors, Ken Rainey, who I still talk to, he continues to do that. I will continue to do that, be a ear. Um, and some of my friends who are out there might do audits for them, but that's pretty much it for the career. Um,
Yeah. And you had that over 30 plus year career, and you've got lots of stories. Talk about something that you're really proud of in your career in law enforcement,
oh,
because we're trying to recruit people behind us to kind of join this profession. And we all say, in the interviews, I joined this job because I want to help people and all that sort of stuff. But we
mhm.
also want a variety and a fun job and something that keeps us interested for 30 plus years. So talk about something that you've done, a cool investigation, a cool arrest, or something like that that you've been engaged with in your career.
No, you caught me with that one. I wasn't expecting that.
I mean, we've
As
all
a,
seen
oh,
some tough things too.
yeah, I've seen a lot of tough things. I'll talk about if you want to, but probably the most interesting. I was on our J team in the Contra Costa Sheriff's Department, so I was 30 years old or 29, and there was a heinous murder in Lafayette. Janet Dare was killed by some people who got off a train on off of BART in Lafayette, is one of our contract cities, and basically, we as a J team, we basically went through all Northern California searching for this particular person. So we're going to Fairfield, Stockton, Merced, South San Francisco, writing search warrants, following leads along with detectives. FBI was involved because he was on the train, DOJ, and eventually and that was all summer. I think we probably arrested about 50 people, not in connection with this, but in search of them, trying to flip trees to get someone to tell us who this particular person was. And finally, the guy's girlfriend basically told that what he had done, and we caught that person, and he ended up getting life in prison for that. And that was pretty. It was a one. I think when it first happened, we stayed up for I think 2 days straight, writing search warrants and running around town. So it was pretty worthwhile capturing that person because he
Yeah.
was never gonna do well. I had a long history of criminal acts, but he definitely was a very heinous murder that he had committed over nothing at all.
Wow. Yeah.
Pretty horrific, but it was great to catch that person. And
Yep.
then I got promoted after that and watched him in jail, uh, be pro per, representing himself, completely different person than he was. But
Well,
this person also, again, was high when he committed the crimes. And it goes back to this the scourge of drugs, that would make people do things that they would not normally do and can't even remember doing sometimes when they're under the influence of whatever they're under the influence of. So that was, I mean, one of the highlighting arrests as a young officer.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, what you talked about, the long hours, and
mhm.
I've been attending a lot of retirement ceremonies
Oh,
as
yeah.
of late, and mine will be coming up here one day soon.
Congrats.
And
Yeah.
thank you. And but one things I know that my chief has always talked about is the time away from our own families to work at, in these sorts of cases. You're missing special events. We're missing holidays to do
Yes.
these sorts of things. Talk about that aspect of the job.
Well, and that's funny. It's one of the most difficult things for the young people officers to deal with. Even though we interview and we tell them, you're going to miss birthdays, holidays, they're like, yeah, we want to do it. But this generation, they don't really want that. And they make do, but it's one of the hardest things for them to deal with. For me, I was lucky enough to be in units where I had the ability to not miss most of my kid stuff. I made most of my stuff, and my wife at the time, my high school sweetheart, we didn't make it all the way through. She understood, and we would adjust. But and my kids, who I'm pretty tight with, they understand. They don't think I don't think I miss very much for them because I was actually coaching them throughout most of their athletic careers. So we spent a lot of time together. It was mostly me being sleep deprived and putting my cell phone in the garbage can and putting garbage in the oven because I'm discombobulated on a
Yeah.
graveyard shift trying to be there. But a lot of people, I'm a big proponent of work-life balance. At my department here, I made sure that our wellness program was got a wellness program up and going. I got a clinician that works with our department through a wellness grant, hopefully to keep that thing going because a lot of people, a lot of my friends did not have that work-life balance. And a lot of them, ruin good relationships because they're spending too much time at work and all their friends are cops and they have this group think that they never get out of. I really try to keep all my friends from before I became a peace officer to keeps you balanced. You got to have some balance in your life. So I tell all the cops to keep your old, especially all the new ones I've hired. Try to keep the ones who are worth keeping. Truly try to keep those friends. The friends are not worth keeping. You cut them loose. The ones going to cost you your job or get you in trouble, cut them loose. But the ones that keep you balanced, keep those friends. And make sure that when you can get the days off, not miss your girlfriends, your boyfriends, your children's weddings, and the only thing I really miss, I'm gonna tell you, Dale, the only thing I miss and I regret to this day is I never saw Michael Jordan play because
Oh,
I could never get the day off when he was playing. I couldn't get a shift trade, and that's the only thing But I made all my babies' birthdays and celebrations and stuff like that. Um, so that's the only thing that I
yeah.
knew that I missed and I wanted to make.
Yeah.
Never
But
saw
but
him
you
play.
you've seen Steph a few times, right?
Oh, I've seen Steph a couple times. I saw championship games. I've seen everybody else. Seen LeBron, Kareem, Magic. I just I just miss Michael, which is
Yeah,
terrible.
because he would only come out here a couple times a
Midweek,
year.
couple times a week. It was like midweek. It was like Wednesdays,
Yeah.
and it was like a training day. And you'd like play the Kings, and then you play the Warriors, and never
And
saw
that
him.
was it. Yep.
That
And
was it.
they only come from the East Coast to the West Coast for a couple games, and then that's it. And then they would come down to LA to play the Lakers in the Clippers. And that was
Hmm.
it. Unless you see him in the championship in the NBA Finals, that was it.
Yeah.
Yep,
So,
that was it.
but we
All
do
right.
miss a lot in this job, and you do
Yeah,
sacrifice a lot to protect the people that we serve.
you do.
Um, and I think that most American citizens don't really realize how much we sacrifice and how much stress this job brings. Salient stress, post trauma stress for all of us. We all have it. Doesn't matter what level you have it, and how you can cope with it. So, like I said, I'm big on having therapy clinicians here that they can visit for free. Um, and
Yeah,
you got to take care of your people because you got to have your officers well to go out there and treat the citizens well. You can't have a sick officer go out there and expect them to be at their best if they're hurting in their heart, or in their mind, to be out there policing. And so
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
important.
All right, Chief. Hey, I appreciate you stopping by. Hey, how about before I get you out of here, how about some words of wisdom for the audience?
Absolutely. So know that all of us are humans. We're all human beings. Make sure you throw some love out to people when you're rolling around. Just a little bit of hello, how you doing today, and being sincere and listening for the response. I find that most things that separate us is nothing, is a lack of communication, a lack of understanding, a lack of listening. So just listen a little harder, love a little harder, laugh a little harder, and just be friendly, like a 5-year-old kid, and you'll see what kind of good love you get back.
Love it. I couldn't agree more. All right, Chief. Hey, yeah, again, I appreciate you coming down and spending some time with us on your busy Monday. I know I'm sure you got you got a few things
Tomorrow.
on your plate. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, hey, again, I appreciate you, and hey, go Lakers.
All right, Dale. Thank you.
You take care, Chief. I'll talk to you
All
soon.
right, sir.
All
Take
right, bye
care.
bye. Yes, y'all. Another awesome conversations in the books for the Black and Blue Podcast. Let me thank Emeryville, California Police Chief Jeffrey Jennings for stopping by to spend some of his time with us on this episode. Hey, I appreciate you, sir, and wish you continued success up there in NorCal. If you guys appreciated my conversation with Chief Jennings too, let me know by leaving a comment in the section down there below. I'll be back before you know it with another amazing conversation with a minority in U.S. law enforcement. But till then, say it with me, y'all. Stay black and blue. I'll holla at you. Peace.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.